Good evening, welcome. If you do have a mobile phone, if you would like to put it on silent, please, thank you. Oh yeah, and great to see so many newcomers. Right, a massive welcome to Peter of England with the WeRe Bank up and running. Peter will explain the origin and intention behind the WeRe Bank, its relationship with the Bills of Exchange Act, the issuance and mechanism of the cheques, how they are intended to work and what to do if they don't. Peter also looks ahead to the encroaching cashless society, devaluation of currency, interest goals and more. As with all things financial, a full understanding of the structure, risks and details is required by everybody. Please welcome Peter of England.
Okay, thank you everybody for turning up on a lovely rainy evening here, and it's excellent that so many people have turned up. It just shows the power of this ideology, or what we're trying to deliver here. One or two of the meetings previously have been sort of disrupted, and so, for example, at Glastonbury at the last weekend, there was over 65, I think maybe 70 people turned up for that, and that was even with notification that the meeting was not going ahead, and that was because of constant, I think, abusive phone calls had been made to the venue. So, Truth Juice tomorrow as well in Birmingham, and the only reason I'm mentioning this is just to let you people know it's not just some freak event that's happening here in St Anne's. Thank you. In St Anne's, it's happening everywhere. The Truth Juice meeting tomorrow has been rescheduled. It's put at a slightly different venue because for the first time in the history of that meeting venue, they've had to change it because of pressure that had been put on them. So that only goes to say that whatever I'm doing or whatever this is about must be getting the correct type of attention. So once again, thank you for all of you for coming. What I'm going to do is cover quite new material, because what I don't want you to be able to go away from here tonight thinking is that for any of you who've watched one of the videos on YouTube or wherever it's been placed, that it's the same old thing that you've seen, and I can full imagine, where you've seen some of these videos going on for 2.5 hours. You don't want to hear the same material twice. So we're going to cover new things, we're going to cover different things, but predominantly what I want to start with tonight is most people here have heard of WeRe Bank, and quite a few of you will have joined, I'm sure. One of the stipulations on the WeRe Bank site is that in order to join or to gain access to those financial facilities, that you have to join ReMovement. So the aspect that I'm going to just cover before we get underway really tonight is that ReMovement was always the parent of WeRe Bank. ReMovement came out of a political ideology, or I actually called it originally an anti-political manifesto, that was born around about 2006. And the idea was to make sure that people were aware of the incursion of statutory dictates by a rogue regime in Westminster that were incurring, the incursions onto daily life made it almost a criminalisation of just the very fact of trying to live. So as far as that was concerned, ReMovement came about as the ideological mechanism which would then allow people to rally round, come together in a meaningful group, and actually bring some type of change within the country. Now, there have been a lot of people that have tried similar things in the past, and there have been a lot of movements that have come and gone, and so we wouldn't describe it as a political party, it's a movement, and what it needs to have is everyone's commitment to it, and for everyone really to come along and identify with it. It operates on a very simple principle, which is called a liberating universal principle, and that really just states in effect that each individual has the right to maintain his own life, his own sovereignty, and conduct his affairs as he sees fit without incursion by the state or any external agencies, as long as he's not harming another person's right to do exactly the same, or damaging property or misrepresenting in his contracts. So it's a complete divestment of the state, it's a complete divestment of Westminster Parliament PLC trading out of the Houses of Parliament down there in London. And so ReMovement is going to be soon the key driving force behind WeRe, and within the next 10 days there will be a website. It'll be called, or it's coming under the domain www.re-movement.info, and from that point we're going to put quite a range of facilities together for you. What that will mean in effect, that everyone that's currently a member of WeRe will automatically be a member of ReMovement, because they've had to join ReMovement to join. But anyone thereafter that wishes to join ReMovement, they don't have to get involved with the promissory note side, they don't have to get involved with the financial aspects whatsoever, they don't need a checkbook. We'll bring people on in very large numbers, because included in the £10 a month membership fee will be a complete raft of benefits. One of them will be reinsurance, and what that will entail is that everyone will be given or provided with the equivalent of the old tax disc. Yeah, can you remember the tax discs that you used to have to display? And that will be your that will be a fully comprehensive. It may actually be third party at the beginning, but it will be third party insurance for the vehicle that you'll be driving, and that will come in, and it will be any car, any driver. That will be actually put together, and there'll be various other things that will come in. So we're looking at various packages. There's a refuel for fuel. That's everything to do with utilities. There'll be the one I've just said there, reinsurance. There's an educational aspect. So there's a complete basket of facilities here and offers that we're going to be showing people to make your life easier, and also to make sure that you do have an alternative. And there'll be a legal department or a lawful department, based on the common law. And we'll also put what's called a common law court of record together within that, so that for those people who are maybe in dispute with local councils, or dispute with the banks, who are saying that your particular presentment of a promissory note or your cheque is not recognised, then there'll be court documents that will be provided to back that up, and that will come in to help people like anyone that's in a battle for maybe having their houses repossessed, like Tom Crawford recently went through, for those people who might be aware of that. So that's just to say that ReMovement is going to start pushing on. The groups need to be grown now, because what I actually said when I came back to England in 2006 is that I wanted to introduce something called a polarity principle, whereby the country was polarized. It was split down the middle. And therefore you had a very simple choice. You were either on the side of the government and the status quo and the vested interests, or you weren't. And it was like, it was quite a simple yes-no response to a very simple question. And only people with, a very obtuse mind, or a very sort of, should we say, devious political bent would fail to see that the answer that they would need to give was in everybody's vested interests. So ReMovement, WeRe, the first slide is, and you, because without you we can't do it. Just before we actually get on to the next slide then, to explain some of the aspects and the energy behind this, what I'd just like to say is that ReMovement and WeRe are growing on a daily basis. Presently there's between, I would say, anything between 35 and 40 people a day joining. The numbers are slowly creeping up, but we've deliberately braked it in parts because we just can't handle the number of people. And when I say number of people are joining, that's just joining ReMovement. Then there's the people then that additionally come on a few days or weeks later that join WeRe. And these people are coming on from all over the world. Finland, Estonia, Bolivia. We've got people obviously from the Commonwealth countries, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. Quite a few coming on board now in quite alarming numbers from America. Germany, Ireland, Belfast, Northern Ireland. So what I'd like to just emphasize is this isn't just some, it isn't just some local phenomenon or just some local boys club that's getting a few lucky breaks. Whatever we've touched on is resounding right the way around the planet, so it's more of a planetary movement. I'm not really happy to use the word global because of everything that sort of signifies with the global agenda of the New World Order. But it's an antidote to whatever it is that you see in society that's being forced down your throat on a daily basis. And the ordinary main political parties aren't going to change it. So what we've got to look at now is why do we think we can change it by what we have? So the WeRe Bank operation was predominantly there to get the attention of the status quo, the vested interest, the financial, commercial, should we say, mandarins of power, the Rothschild family, the heads of the banking cartels, people like Bob Diamond, ex-CEO of Barclays Bank, who's now parading around Africa with Tony Blair trying to cut and divide the country up for their own best interests. So all these people that have been responsible consistently for an actual rape of the country and the globe, these international stock market capitalists, these corporate privateers that are operating with their so-called letters of marque, just like the pirates in the old days, that's what they're doing. Everything's been monetized, and the bottom end of it all is you. You pick up the tab. They take the profit, you pick up the tab. And it's something that's always been identified as having to be cured. And the best way to look at it, I suppose, is having a parasite on you. Doesn't matter if it's a tick on a dog or it's some type of candida fungus within your gut. It gets to a point when certain drastic measures have to be taken. Otherwise, you're just going to end up in a situation where it gets progressively worse. So it's how you do it, and this is a non-violent, should we say, I wouldn't say it's completely passive, but we don't rely on anything other than the pen. Yeah, that's why the checkbooks were delivered, because it's a revolution that's brought about not with a guillotine or a sword or smashing windows. It's something that's brought about by the pen. And one of the things with the checkbook that people shouldn't forget is why the checkbook was delivered is it's a complete substitute when the ATM machines stop pumping out that fiat currency that you become conditioned, and I don't mean you, I mean one, has been conditioned to rely on. And if you look at what's happening in Greece at the moment, it's on its way here for sure. It's just a matter of time before it jumps over. So the virus has already been propagated. They know what they're doing with it. There are people who don't want that to happen, and it's those people that don't want it to happen who are in major part behind WeRe Bank. Okay, so it is me and it isn't me. There are others beside me, energetically, physically, and it's a repository to ensure that if there is another turnaround, like in 1929, the Great Depression, or what happened in the Weimar Republic from 1929 through to 35, that people aren't left in such situations that they just can't cope and they think their world has come to an end. Because that is what the sequence of events usually is. Credit is built up to an all-time high, and then the bubble is burst. Everyone is thrown into chaos, and by the time you actually know what's going on, whether there's been war, civil unrest, civil disturbance, the wealthier before are even more wealthier than after. So that's a little bit about ReMovement, WeRe Bank, what the ideology behind it is. There's a lot of pockets to it. It isn't, I assure you, just about checkbooks. It's not about 10 quid a month. The £10 a month is to bring people together. And the meetings are the key, because we've got to have meetings. We've got to get back to what our fathers did, our grandfathers did, and our great-grandfathers did. They all came together in meetings. They didn't have the internet. They didn't just press a like button, on a YouTube video and then walk away thinking, oh, well, I've done something. Because these little confections are put there by the elite on these psychologists to really release pressure from you, so that once you've done that, or you've made a contribution by PayPal, you feel a lot better and you think, well, I don't really have to do too much more now. It's sort of like you feel a bit satiated. So where this is going is more meetings in more frequently and bigger. And then the idea, as I mentioned to a few people at the beginning, my ambition is by October, I know this is quite a stretch, but to have reasonably large numbers of people in football stadia. That's where I'd like to get this. Big events around the country, 20, 30, 40,000 people turning up for a meeting and someone telling us we can't come in. You know? So that's part of my dream. Okay, so let it be if it's going to happen, and this is quite good. It's either going to happen or it's going to fade into some type of oblivion, and you know, people will be talking about it as the next great thing that never came. So, first of all, the symbol that we use, you might have seen it on some of the documents. For those people who aren't aware of where the symbolisms come from, it's something called a rune. Who's heard of runes before? And if you haven't, you might see that the one on the extreme left, the rune Sawilo, was doubled up by the SS. Yeah? So that's a lightning symbol. And the runes originate from the time of Atlantis, for people who believe in that. For people who don't, then we'll go much further than that. And these are what's called ASKs, or ASKs, Archetypal Symbol Code. These codes are structures that resonate within your DNA in a very subliminal way and send messages into the system that transcend time, transcend space, and transcend consciousness. And if you look at the Bluetooth symbol, yeah, that's the rune, 18th rune, Bacano, which Bluetooth claim they've actually trademarked or patented. Nokia, anyone got a Nokia phone or heard of the company? The K in Nokia, if you actually look very, very closely, you'll see on the K, yeah, the little part of it is not touching, it isn't touching the upright part, and that's a rune in there. So lots of runes have been used in the past for various esoteric reasons, and a lot of people don't know this kind of stuff, but everybody's heard of the Avengers thing, this thing with Thor, for the children thing, Loki, Thor, the Tiawas, or the god Thor, and all this, Thor's hammer, and Odin, the god of all of them, yeah. So this is where you get, if you take the 24 letters of what's called the FCUTT, that's the old Norse alphabet. It's not actually an alphabet, it's a system of codes. And if you take the last three and read them backwards, I've got a pointer here which I can demonstrate with. You've got the O, and then you've got, oh right, I've got even better pointer here. You've got the O there, and the D, and the IN. Yeah? And you put them together and you get Odin. So the last three runes come in. The last three runes, maybe that was Odin coming in, who knows? Yeah. So what you've got there is that. And that's quite powerful stuff. Incorporated into runes, you get the expression to be ruined from ruined. So if you had a rune put upon you, it was always very important to find out how it had been presented to you. Yeah, because there's good ways of receiving them, there's not good ways. We're in very good ways here. So these just some of the symbols. These are it's like passive architecture. There's another one, Thurias, and that just symbolizes a thorn. So the ReMovement one is what's called a bind rune. It's a combination, and it's got other energies put in it. And the idea within a rune is if it's charged correctly, then it delivers an energy that is, I wouldn't say it's completely irresistible, but in Iceland, I think up until, I think it was 1898, it was still a capital offence, punishable by death, obviously, to be in possession of runes. Who's heard of Charlemagne? Charlemagne the Great, crowned in, I think it was crowned in St. Peter's in 800 AD on Christmas Day as the head of the Holy Roman Empire. He's supposed to have had a sword in his hand which was created for him by a guy called Wayland from the Wiltshire Downs. Wayland the Forgerer. And that sword supposed to have had runes encrusted upon it. And the idea was that they were so powerful just by the very mention of the fact that that weapon was on the battlefield, actually it had some psychological invincibility about it. And tales of King Arthur and the sword and Camelot and all the rest of it. So not to go on too much, it's just to let you know, this isn't just checkbooks we're playing around with here. There's something that you might all want to, look into and appreciate. And above all, it comes from a very honourable background, and that's something that you can only get probably by coming here, listening to me speak. And as some gentleman said earlier, he wanted to come up and look me in the eye and just see what maybe it was all about. Because, it isn't a scam, it isn't a rip-off, it isn't a way of me getting the might of the global banking industry reined up against me so I can get £10 a month off you. I'd probably rather take benefit off the state than probably do that. So, moving on. This is really what it's about. This is what I wanted to do when I came back to the UK in 2006, 2007. For those who don't realise it, 2007, April, I was in Longton Magistrates Court with 26 warrants for the arrest of 13 members of Tony Blair's cabinet and 13 members of George Bush's what's called Team B inner sanctum operating out of Washington. The arrest warrants were for Lord Goldsmith, Tony Blair, Jack Straw, Hoon, people like Two Jags, what was his name? Two Jags Prescott, etc. And so the list went on. So I've had contact with these people. These documents and dossiers were delivered to Staffordshire Police HQ Anti-Terrorist Division. And years later, when they're questioned, they don't know what they did with it. But a duplicate document was sent to a guy called Patrick Fitzgerald, who's a special prosecutor for the United States Department of Justice in Chicago in 2007. And so this isn't stuff that I'm new to. And so this is just, sometimes I speak about it, sometimes I don't, but it's now time to get more of it out, because I don't want people thinking, this is some sort of phenomenon that's just been hatched out of the back of, an ice cream van a few weeks ago. There's a lot of people who've been involved in it. There's a lot of people who've tried to push this through. People like David Icke with the People's Voice. 3 months it lasted, and it didn't last any longer. So there's a lot of powerful people arrayed against it, but there's also a lot of powerful people, 64 million of you in the country, against, a few thousand old men in suits that are telling you what to do and what you can't do. So, we've really got to man up and get onto the plate and start swiping at the ball. Otherwise, it's all going to be a little bit too late. Okay, so what we have here is this first point here, inviolable human sovereignty. That's a bit of a parody or a takeoff of the IHS symbol that the Catholic Church have used. It's supposedly the little motif that was put above Jesus on the cross. Aios, can't remember now, lost it. Aios Sota, I think, Jesus, Saviour of mankind. So I took that and just turned it into this sovereignty issue, because we're all basically shackles of the state. We're all vaccinated, we're all ear tagged, and if they get the RFID chips into you, then they won't need the ear tags. So it doesn't take a genius to see where this is going. European Parliament are now just in the final stages of debating when they allow onto the street something called the law. Lethal autonomous weapon. Anyone seen Elysium with Matt Damon? The robots that patrolling on the line when he's just about to go to work. They aren't CIG Hollywood mock-ups. These are done by DARPA and special divisions in the United States. These things are ready to go on the streets. This is why there's all this robot technology. The planet at the moment is, don't disappear. The planet at the moment is being, I think, run by AI, artificial intelligence. It's too complicated at the moment for a bunch of well-meaning bankers and people with an IQ of Obama and Blair and Bush or Merkel or Francois Hollande to be doing anything. Yeah, yeah. They couldn't run a bring and buy sale. And this is the thing: people think they're intelligent. They think they're working all night. They think they're going off and having these incredible meetings, in Bratislava to discuss the next security announcements or initiatives. They're not. You see that YouTube video of David Cameron on, was it the Letterman show or someone, when he was asked what Magna Carta meant? I didn't even know. That's what an Eton education does, and 3 years at Cambridge. With all these chums like Boris Johnson and Nathan Rothschild and, George Olivier Gideon Osborne. These are all the goons of the highest order. So what we've got to do is get this sovereignty issue sorted out. Then this thing here, this is why the checks came in. The checkboard. Yeah, you look at the chessboard. Look at the checkers on a police car, in the church. Square mile of London, the city. You've all heard of it. Yeah, square mile, 640 acres. Yeah, 640 on a chessboard. 64 codons in human DNA. It's all very, very deep, esoteric shit that they loaded on you. Yeah, okay, so this is the thing that no one in this country, included my very good friend David, if you're listening, has brought out ever into the open as an alternative to their side. And this is this esoteric, demonic witchcraft or knowledge that they've used and they've saturated the planet with. And if you don't have someone who can unpick it or neutralize it, you're going to be like bees with smoke on you. And I don't mean you people here, I mean everyone. We're all walking around in a bit of a malaise thinking, it's that brain fog sometimes where you just think, I'd love to do something, but I really don't know what. Why did I ask the question? And it's gone. What channel was I watching? And so, it rolls through. And this is what they're relying on, and this is why the towers are there, this toxic electronic soup we're all drowning in. And I asked someone today, a show of hands here, these the phone masts and the antennas that are everywhere at the side of the roads and in the fields. A show of hands. Who's ever actually seen one being put up? Where do they come from? No cranes there. No men are putting them up. And I don't know. It's occurred to me for some time, and I've kept asking. And just for the video, there's no one putting their hand up at the moment. It used to be a big issue. You did used to have this contentious part within communities where they demonstrate, this NIMBY, not in my backyard. But you just don't see these things going up anymore. And I've got my suspicions how it's done, but that's another interview or another talk somewhere else. So what we've got to do here is get this Checkmate thing going. And it's like Checkmate the game. So it's a play on the checkbooks from WeRe Bank and Checkmate. Yeah? Because that's what the checkers board will lead to. The game of chess, eventually someone, if the game is played to any extent other than a draw, you're going to get checkmated. The king goes over. It's finished. So we've got to use some type of wisdom, intelligence, and foresight, and an energy that's got to come from outside of you by definition, because if you could do it yourself, you'd do it. And you can't do it yourself, so you've either got to do it collectively, or we've got to get help from outside. It's where that help is parked up. That help is parked up dimensionally, it's in, for those people who believe in nature spirits, fine. If those people who believe in leprechauns, call them whatever, fairies, gnomes, extraterrestrials, God, angels, the whole, there's quite a complex aspect of energy out there that is available and can be tapped into. We don't go down the route too much of whether it's, the House of Windsor or all reptiles running around shape-shifting. But, there's wilder stuff out there than what we've just touched on there. So, no standing still on a tightrope, you've got to do something. You're either going to be in an evolutionary spiral, it's actually called an omega plus cycle, or it's an omega minus. So at certain times of planetary evolution and people's evolution, we all look around and we go, well, where's it all going? Who's in charge of it? Who's making the decisions for us? And you're not making any of them right now. You're all being led, and this is why it's not good when the car is in front of the horses. We used to be told, oh, it's all consumer-led. It's not consumer-led anymore. It's all parked up on a shelf in Sony HQ in Japan, waiting to be rolled out to you. Yeah? And so, we eat it up like, the next fix. And where it's leading us is into a bit of an annihilation and a bit of a future that, we really should start to think, where do we join these dots up to? So decisions have got to be made. This is the polarity thing, polarity principle. And wherever there's a polarity and a diversification, you've got to apply that. Catalyst. If you don't apply that, people will just stay forever in their comfortable situations, and they don't have to move because no action or behavioural change is required. So a catalyst has got to be applied, and this is the catalyst now. It's the decision. What do you want to do? What's being offered for you to ride on into the future? It's going to be ReMovement, bolted to WeRe Bank, tied in with other things. So acts and consequences follow, and the one thing for sure, that karma, anyone who's not heard of it, karma, the law of cause and effect, it's quite a sensible aspect. Whatever actually is given out will come back eventually. The dark side, or the people who are malevolently intentioned towards you, don't always necessarily believe that, or in some instances they think they can balance it by doing philanthropic acts, to justify their evil deeds. This is why they're all involved in charities, and this is why Warren Buffett and George Soros give billions away, because they think by helping people they can make up for all these so-called dirty deeds they do. Right, so ReMovement, it's this politics in one word, a liberating, overriding, universal principle. It's exceptionally simple. I don't think you can read it. Maybe at the back you can't, but I'll just try and get it from here. I hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion, sovereignty and control over their own lives and livelihood, as long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal right of others to live in whatever a manner they so choose, and that we enforce the law evenly and openly without fear or favour under a common law jurisdiction within a public court of record. That's it. How do you answer that? Do you agree with it or do you not agree with it? If you don't, then fine, go your way and do whatever. If you do agree with it, then that's it. It's a binary choice with no shade of grey. Either you and only you have the right of dominion ownership over your humanity and nobody else does, or you do not. It's this video in 2012. Who owns you? Does the government own you and tell you what to do at every turn and twist of the day? Or have you got the right to that dominion? So, next we go on to the battlefield. Who knows who this character is?
Lord Denning.
Not Lord Denning, no. If he was still alive, I'd probably kiss him and he'd be turning in his grave. Not because I kissed him, because he was just turning. This guy is what's called a city remembrancer. He sits behind the Speaker in the House of Commons, not dressed like that, but that's the intention. And he ensures that no legislation gets passed through the House of Commons that is against any of the interests, the overriding interests of the City of London. Okay? That's him. There's a city remembrancer, excuse me. There's the city remembrancer, and then there's the Queen's remembrancer, who sits in the usually in the Old Bailey. And that's why all these so-called top celebrities, when they end up going to trial, it's usually a trial for criminal activity in the Old Bailey, and why invariably, depending upon who you know, is how you get off. So this guy has got a knife in one hand, and he's got a horseshoe in the other, and there's a ceremony I think it's every year, performed with something called 61 nails, and this is to ensure that the City of London stays what's called like an enclave or a principality, and it's got its own police force. It's a state in and of itself, and the Inns of Court are all, shall we say, in on the job, and this is why the top barristers, the top judiciary, the top police commissioners are all running into this, and this black and white Masonic tiled floor is what's called the floor of Malkuth. And the floor of Malkuth is supposed to be for the initiates to decide what tiles they need to be standing on in order to progress whatever it is they do. So these guys are involved and control military, Masons, mafia, monarchy, mayhem. M1 is the money supply. Used to hear a lot about that at budget time. Used to say the MO is this, the M1, M2 money supply. There's never any mention of it anymore because it's all too technical and it gets in the way of how they actually make their money. Then you've got this other stuff. This was all done because I was going to write a book and call it M People. So this is what we've got here. MacArthur, Mandelson, Manchurian Candidate, Murder, MI5, MI6, Miliband. They're all the same hand in the same glove. And what we have, this international, elitist, global, Zionist, narcissistic, fascist, Luciferian, Baal-worshipping, psychopathic banking cartel. And that's just about it. They're psychopaths, they're vain, they're obsessed with their own continuity, they're obsessed, like the royal family are, with dressing up in uniforms, you know. Philip there parading around, and one day he's a Lord Admiral of the fleet, and the next day he's in another uniform. I mean, you know, it's just a joke when you look at what it's about. It's so far in the past for any evolving planet that you would actually have to question the sanity of anyone that could actually look at it and say, well, yeah, that's it. We want more of it. We don't want less of it. So they are beholden to the Vatican. They are steeped in astrological and occult behaviour. Prince William, born on the summer solstice, 21st of June. One other member of the royal family was. If you're into numerology, if you take the leading members of the House of Windsor, I think 90% of them all have a numerological name that comes to 7. Yeah, so this is it's an energy that they give out, so that a bit like the mystery of the Archbishop's ring, that it's supposed to give out an energy where people become quite subservient and quite compliant in their presence. So they haven't missed a trick in all of this, and this is why it works. As they have it working. So here's the enemy, and what we've got to look at then is what is it that they don't want you to know about, and the next part then is there's like a solution. It's only symbolized. This is a representation of lots of things that people will have seen. You've seen the Ankh in ancient Egypt, so you've got the Ankh around here, then you've got the aspects of a triangle, and you've got lots of this displayed in ancient Egypt. It comes from Atlantis, so it's extremely ancient. It's extremely ancient. It's extremely powerful when correctly invoked. So the idea is to take the situation with these people who are using this negative energy and start bringing in some type of positive energy. And so what we're looking at is the main areas that they control are like 3 legs on a milking stool. There's the energy aspect, which is your fuel bills, your gas, your fuel at the pump. Then there's the sovereignty issue, How come they can be telling you what to do all the time, where they can take your children from you if you misbehave, if you don't take your child to school within the correct term time, they can set social services on you. They don't want you to homeschool. They tell you need to be vaccinated. They tell you where to park, where you don't need to park, what you can go on holiday with, the fact you're subject to having your photograph taken every time you leave the country or come into it now. There's no end to it. So the name of their game is disruption or chaos. One of the principal Masonic tenets is what's called order ab chao, which means order through chaos. You know, it's a bit like problem, reaction, solution for those who've read David Icke's work. This is what they're looking to do. So what we're looking to do is to say, well, what's coming and where's this movement got to take us? And for those who aren't aware of this, I think by 2018, it looks like in Europe there will be no more money. That was the plan. Apart from small denomination 5 or 10 euro notes to pay for bread and ice cream by the beginning of 2018. And I think sometime next year, the retailers in Denmark have got the opportunity or the right to declare their shops a cashless environment. So this all ties in with Cashless Britain. It all ties in with the ads that you've seen, the advertising, Cashless Britain, or contactless they call it, because they don't want anyone touching anyone anymore. You can't touch the children in school if they fall down and need a bandage on their leg. You don't need to be touching each other. You all need to be living at home behind screens, focusing on screens with little things in our ears. And so we're going into an electronic virtual world, and that's where they're trying to drag it. They don't spend all this money digitalizing and putting these fiber optic cables in just so you can watch the X Factor much more peacefully. They do it because what they have is an agenda, and that agenda is the thing, because it's like a fish swimming down into a fish trap. It goes so far and then it finds it can't turn around and come back out, so it only has to keep going. And really that's what's happening with everyone now. There seems to be no way out of it, so we just keep going. And the key to it is trying to find a way to stop it. So the main ways to bring it to the ground are: 1, stop, withdraw your labour. This is why the unions were broke by Thatcher in the 80s. The agenda was to stop the working man having the right to withdraw his labour, and what it's resulted in now is what you inherit today: 0 hours contracts. The word union or workers' rights is a dirty word. You go and work for Amazon or Sainsbury's and they've got you know, it's almost like being in a science fiction film. You know, you've got these things on your arm, it's monitoring your every movement with a GPS system to see where you're taking the most efficient route, or if you're taking 3 minutes for a pee break. You know, it's turning humanity into a robot, and it's all around us. So there's the sovereignty issue, there's the energy issue, and then there's the financial. So if any of those legs can be broken, then the other 2 must follow. This is why my excursion for now is into this financial world, because I used to trade derivatives full-time on the stock market. I used to do very, very well. I've seen what goes on in stock markets. I've seen the degree of just criminal behavior and just what they can do and get away with. And we see the fact that there is no laws. The laws are your laws, not theirs. Yeah, they can lose billions and not even end up in a magistrate's court. You've only got to probably just go through a red light, and you end up on the wrong end if you refuse to pay the £300 fine. Yeah, and points as well. So what we've got to look at is, if we're looking on the financial side and we're looking at the fact that is there going to be any currency left for you within the next 18 months, my prediction or belief is the mathematical certainty that they're going to have to collapse the financial markets eventually, and I think we could be very, very close. America's in a dire strait. The only reason the stock markets are where they are is because of this quantitative easing nonsense. Yeah? So it didn't work in America. There's 50 million people on food stamps. Yeah? 50 million in America. And capitalism works. Yeah? Yeah, look at capitalism around the world. This great model. Yeah? Capitalist France, capitalist Italy, capitalist Spain, capitalist Portugal, capitalist Greece, capitalist all through South America, capitalist France. Yeah? Everybody's broke. Nobody's got any money. Yeah? It's an oligarchy, an elitist oligarchy, the Clintons and the Mellons and the people like the Bush families and the Middletons over here, the landed gentry. It's the same old story that's been going on forever. So why do we think we can change it when the great and the good of the past have failed? Because it's time, and there's a bit more behind this expedition than was in some of the previous ones, which were just bare knuckle fights on the street. And within 50 years, everybody had got, the people who were dispossessed had everything back that they had before the trouble began. And that's always historically what's happened. So it's got to be thought through a little bit better and with a little bit more intelligence, and it could just so happen that we will get it right this time for reasons that we'll touch on in a moment. So this is the state that has been in the past. So we're just going to go a little bit back to the past and see what's happening in Greece at the moment. Need not happen. A very good thing that the Greek people should do now is just pull out of the EU, go back to using the drachma or an alternative currency, and do exactly what the Icelandics did in 2008. And the president of Iceland, Olaf Grimsson, said they were hoiked up nearly as antisocial exhibit A in the courts in 2008, 9 and 10, but now in 2015 they're exhibit A as to how it should be done. Yeah? And that's because the people turned on the government. The people turned up with boat flares and torches outside the Icelandic parliament, threatening to burn the thing down. There's only 320,000 people in Iceland. That's why they could do it. Yeah? And what they had round their neck, delivered to them by private commercial banks, just like the Greeks have had delivered to them, was around about 400,000 US dollar debt for every single Icelandic, which they hadn't generated. And it's the same bullshit propaganda story that they're trying to feed onto us about the Greeks, or the Spanish, you know, or the Italians, or the Portuguese, or the Irish. And just remember, if you don't know, the actual debt for the UK is higher than Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain, or Ireland. That's why you've got your roads not being fixed, nothing gets fixed, yet the vanity projects for HS2 and the new Wonder Gherkin in London, yeah, they get built, but nothing else gets done for you because you are just deemed. Their attitude under what's called the terms of the trust for you is you should be thankful that you have a roof over your head and enough food to keep you alive by the end of the month. It's the old SPQR from Rome, Senator Populus K. Romanus. There were the slaves and the Senate. And you, unfortunately, aren't in the Senate. You're not in their club. The club they use is this thing they beat you over the head with every minute of the day to bang you into compliance in the courts, at the side of the road, and wherever it is that the bailiff turns up or anyone else wants to coerce you or bully you or, you know. They say no bullying, but you're bullied every day. So this is what we've had in the past. We've had in the past great periods. I start at 1717 because that's when a guy called Sir Isaac Newton, who was the master of the Royal Mint, set a price and fixed it at £3, 17 shillings and 10 for an ounce of gold. And it stayed at that price for over 200 years. And if you go back from that point, there's not many figures, but invariably it stayed like that. If you look at any prices up to about 1913, when this horrible parasitic creation came into being, the Federal Reserve in the United States, and then conveniently we had a war straight after, Yeah? Price stability isn't good for bankers. Yeah? They don't like price stability. They like inflation, they like taxation, and they like interest. And that's usury, and it's immoral, and it's what the people and the president of Greece now said. Debt is immoral, especially if it cannot ever be paid back. But what you've all been brainwashed into believing and brought up as very good, should we say very good and responsible people, always pay your debts. Yeah? Yeah? It used to be don't borrow. Yeah? Don't take it if you can't afford it. Where did all that mindset go? Yeah? It got washed out in about 20 years through Thatcher's bubble credit Britain. Because why they broke the miners and the unions was for one simple thing. The moment that the working man couldn't withdraw his labour anymore, he had to go somewhere else for the fix. And the bankers had the credit ready. And you were fed on the credit. And that's that's as reprehensible as the junkie standing at the school gates with whatever it is, passing the drug through to the children who are totally innocent and quite unaware of what's going on. So when Barclays and Santander and HSBC say to you, you've got to pay this, or we're taking you to court, or we're repossessing your house, or we're going to do this to you, that's what they've done. They force-fed you that credit, and it's not necessarily the person at the desk or the head of the legal department, but it's the criminal agency he's working for. And if they're working for a criminal agency, then they're accessory before the fact. And if you make sure they know what they're doing and they continue doing it, there's no plausible deniability anymore. They're accessories after the fact. And there's some very, very nice international legislation which is being prepared, which is ready for all these people who were involved in that. So this is part of bringing the subject of who's responsible, what they're doing, and what's happened in the past. So we're touching on this here. Price stability is not good. Lies, inflation, interest, taxation, and they say a business cycle. Devaluation of the money supply keeps you like a rat on a wheel. You could never, ever know how much you needed to retire. So in this period here, 1717, any time through there, if I took you back in a time machine to 1717 and you said, well, about, I don't know, 10 ounces of gold is enough to keep me for the rest of my life, we could have taken you 150 years into the future and you could have done exactly the same. But now you can't, because you never know. And we don't know what inflation is going to be like, and we don't know what the return is going to be on the pension fund and all the rest of the nonsense. So what they've tried here now is this credit is what's called negative capacitance in a circuit. And what we are all energy consumers, they build up this negative capacitance, and how they discharge it is by war. War, war, every time, because once that comes down, you are socially, spiritually, energetically, community, just demotivated, paralyzed, and wrecked. And everybody then spends the next 20 years just praying, leave me alone, just let me, be able to have a piece of bread, a butter, and a cup of tea, and I'll be happy. That's the thing, and that's what we've got to address. Now we're coming up to, are we okay to carry on? We're 5 to 9, good. Okay, so what I'll see here is what we have then is an idea. So it's my idea, right? Me. Yeah, let's just say. But if we look at what the world is, it's nothing but ideas. Yeah? The idea of these microphones, or the idea of a piece of furniture, all first of all has to come out of someone's mind first. And so with our society, that's what we're doing. We're just making it up on the fly. We're just making it up as we go along. And so as we make it up, so we can change it. Yeah? So an idea increases by being given away. So if I give this away now to you and you like the idea, then have I lost or gained? I've gained. Let's look at it as a joke. I'm a comedian. I tell a series of jokes. You find them so funny. You go to work Monday morning, you can't remember four of the first 4 lines of it. And you said to your mate, well, it's funny at the time, yeah? And that's what it is. You give the joke out, more and more people give it out, more and more of it. So however then can giving be equated with losing? It can't. The mindset, though, we've been conditioned into is a scarcity principle, that there's not enough, there never will be, and therefore you've got to grab everything you can in a very short 50, 60-year period of life, and then that's it. So this is shall we say, for those who are that inclined, the spiritual dynamic to get away from this Babylonian, demonic, worshipping, double-entry bookkeeping system that they've introduced everybody into, that there's not enough. So what we're looking at now is, how do we get enough? We get enough with the WeRe bank aspect that we'll touch on, and then we're looking at this. So we've covered this. There's a proposal here. And if we're wrong, it doesn't matter, because it's a good way to be wrong. So we've got this 30-month window, probably up until the beginning of 2018, whereby if the European Central Bank is having its way with the Federal Reserve coming in behind it, there's an agenda to collapse the currency in Europe. The beginning could have already happened, depending on what happens here in Greece. If it does, there should be, or could be, and this is the thing I don't know whether this is the deliberate engineering for them to collapse the dominoes, or whether there will be a popular uprising where other countries like Ireland or Spain, Portugal or Italy will all come up and say, well, we've had enough of it, we want to leave as well. That's still on the table. But what we've got to do is look at this idea here. We've got to get back to this caring community. So WeRe Bank was always established to try and bring in this community aspect, to keep it local, to people operate locally. And for those who've been on the website and seen this, the example of WeRe Bank in Switzerland, a bank that was set up in 1929, it operates very successfully. About 20% of all small medium enterprises in Switzerland are members of it. They have their own card. They've got a unit of currency called the WeRe, which means we, or it's a play on a word for a collective, what's called a circle or ring of trust. And the trade works very, very well. So they don't need the Swiss franc, very similar to other countries or experiments where they've used a different form of currency. So just because we've got the sterling pound doesn't mean we have to use it. We don't have to use the Bradbury pound or any of these other what's called complementary currencies. And this is why the RE, or the unit there, has been brought alongside sterling, which is not transferable back, because we want to make this statement. It's not, this is a one-way pipe. Whatever's going down this pipe isn't coming back. You've got no option here. If you change sterling into RE, it stays there as a unit of currency. It doesn't get changed back. So most of you have probably read the mindset that we're under attack, or we're being conditioned to become there. So what I'd just like to put up now is, if I could we just have that Excel, there's a spreadsheet I'd just like to show you, just to put that thing about the 1717 aspect. Isaac Newton, he was the master of the Royal Mint, and he was the one who came up with the pricing structure. And if we just bring that one up, I think it's the comparison one, that one. What we have here, if we can just go down, yeah. Okay, so what we've got there is just a representation visually of what's happened with gold and what's called GDP per capita from about 1717 up to now. And what you can see is 1717, 1914, 1960, 1980, and we have this. So where and why did that come from? So the extrapolation for you here in just a gold-backed type of, this isn't a gold selling club, or we're not, it's not what we call gold bug club. What we're just trying to show is that something happened. It stayed constant and constant and constant. And what you can see here is around about 40 years after what's called Bretton Woods. Bretton Woods Agreement 1944 was the agreement where the sovereign nations of the world came together to basically join a global credit union, which was arranged by the Rothschilds and people like Keynes, the so-called brilliant economist, the Bank of International Settlements, the Federal Reserve, and all of them got together there, and then a 40-year agreement to give the gold back to the sovereign nations, particularly the ones in the Far East, Indonesia, Kuala Lumpur, China, Vietnam, Burma. And so what happened is they reneged on it. Then just before that, actually, there was something called 1973, the Nixon shock, when they disconnected the gold from the US dollar. And from then on, they jumped it up here. So we've had massive inflation. And all I'm making the point there is that if it was very good for 200 years, 300, 400, it can be good now. There are those people who might say, well, it's all changed now because we've got, what have we got? We've got the internet boom, and we've got Amazon and Starbucks now, and we've got satellites. We've got all this technology. But what we've got here, way before that, we've got the Industrial Revolution. We've got the British Empire, the most successful and most opulent trading period in the history of the world ever, parked right in there. So don't let anybody come along and say, oh, well, the mathematics weren't like that then, or these Cambridge economists working for positive money coming along and saying, well, yes, there are other considerations we need to take into account, and that's, it's all bullshit. As my father would say, they couldn't find their backside with both their hands. And that's the problem with it. It's all lost in this mumbo-jumboism, but that there is the only ever, if you don't take anything out from here tonight, the trickery is not there, it's here. So that's if we could just go back to the slides now. And so if you want to look at some of these figures yourself, go back and see what a gallon of oil was in the United States anytime from 1720 through to 1914. Doesn't matter what your price, it was all consistent, and it was all consistent for a reason, because the Federal Reserve hadn't come into.
Started about east.
Yeah, and then they're all exactly in.
East set it up.
Yeah. We're looking at this. We've got to pause in a moment, so I'll whisk through this quite quickly. The key to financial stability is a unit of currency. It doesn't have to be the ReMovement. You can call it anything you want. You can call it I don't know. You can call it a Ford Fiesta. Planetary collateral reserves and the prepaid treasury accounts are what we're looking at here with the unit of currency and the philosophy behind WeRe Bank. Because whether you realize it or not, the collective pooled wealth of the planet was hoovered and vacuumed up from a period from about, let's say, started about 1910, consistently through Europe, and finished around about 1952 after the war. The Japanese were responsible for one part of the globe, Hitler and his National Socialists through Europe. That's why we had a world war, and that was to ensure that the energy theft could become complete and that no nation on the planet would have the ability of what's called finality of settlement and its own currency. And all the nations of the world were then sold on the idea that to stop such a thing happening again, this war, let's put some credit agreements together where we'll use paper money, and in return for all you pooling your money with us, the gold, we will give you letters of credit. Yeah? And when everything's stabled and settled down in 30, 40 years, you can have it all back, but we'll be in a much more peaceful and prosperous society then. The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights was the policy document they showed to them to bring it in. And if you ever look at the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, it's quite, if it was looked on its face, a good document. It offers all sorts of benefits and safeguards to people. So what we're trying to look at then here is this gold pegging here. The official amount of gold, according to the World Bank, is about 186,000 metric ton. The true amount is about 4.5 million metric tons. A lot of it is kept in Switzerland under the vaults of the Bank for International Settlements, in about 30 kilometres worth of vaults. So what I'm saying is, there's a trust out there, and it's yours, because you're the last atom on the pinhead. And who went before you were your parents. And who went before your parents were your grandparents. All the way back till whenever you can imagine, if you believe in Adam and Eve. And so the collective wealth belongs to the people. Just like if I said, who owns the planet? The people. Yeah, nobody owns the planet. Even a 6-year-old would answer, no one owns it. So if nobody owns it, how can people have cut it up into small sub-leases and small holes like they have? So we're looking to see, is there a way of modernizing gold? Can we bring the aspect of gold up to the present and the future now to protect you, people, if something happens in the future, to give you the ability to travel and go anywhere and spend in any way you wish with total impunity to whatever government might want to project on you or any other external organization. And the idea is that it can be. And so what we need to do is to look at this here. Can we modernize this gold aspect, and can we bring it in? So that's bringing us up to sort of a point here as far as what WeRe Bank was established for. The political aspect is bringing people together and offering them a political voice. But if we want to make it realistic and work, then we need to have a solution. We can't just say, because the first thing any political commentator or questioner was going to say, but how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to make it work? One of the things you don't want to get into, and we'll look at this maybe after a break, if we could take a break in a few minutes, and that would be, at the moment, the suggestion is that you're walking around with notes in your pocket, yeah, £10 notes or £20 notes, and they all say, it's a promise to pay, yeah? The Governor and Court of the Bank of England, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £5 or £10. So, it's worth nothing. It used to be backed by something. In 1931, when Britain took off the gold standard, I think on September the 26th, 1931, strange how that document doesn't appear on uk.gov legislation websites. From that point, the only thing you could do, you were forced out from the private side into the public. So you no longer had the ability to settle your debt with your colleague or your brother with anything other than a Bank of England promissory note. And from that point, the country was technically bankrupt. So the problem with a promise to pay is it's a promise to pay. So when you go to Tesco or Sainsbury's or Morrison's, you go to the counter, yeah, and you pay, yeah, with one of these. It says, I promise to pay. And they let you go with the food. But a promise has to predicate the fact that you don't have the actual instrument, or you wouldn't be making the promise, would you? So if I promise to give you 50 quid next week, it's because I don't have 50 quid on me. And you expect me to come with it. Or if I promise to give you the rally bike that, I said I'd give you, I'll give you, it's a promise. So how many people actually go back after they've taken their goods through the Morrison's checkout? How many of you actually go back a day or a week later and fulfill the promise? None of you. You don't deliver, you don't take anything back. You give them a promise and you take the goods. So as far as what you're actually receiving, technically speaking, what you're all part of is this prepaid treasury. everything is prepaid. That's why when you go almost anywhere these days, they always ask you to sign. You go and get your sterling in Thomas Cook. You want to go on holiday. Yeah, you give them 50 quid, they give you your euros. They ask you to sign a piece of paper. They ask you to sign everything because you're signing for it, but they're still asking you to pay on it after. So this is why acceptance for value works. This is why signing bank giro credits work. This is why promissory notes work. This is why the whole thing, which is built on a lie, is just built to sap and steal energy from you by convincing you that you've got to pay for it all again. So the prepaid treasury account is a bit like being in the army. Yeah, you go into the army and then you go and get all your goods and your clothes, your boots, your weapon, whatever it is, your hat, your beret. You just sign for it. Yeah, that's it, the signature. And this is realistically what's happening in society, but you have all been convinced otherwise. So the amount of wealth on the planet that is being held back by the elites, and people like Bill Clinton is a Rhodes Scholar, and he's what's called a holder of the keys. People like these are the families that are in charge of this global planetary trust, and all of this material wealth that has been confiscated and held back from you by the politicians, that's the agenda. So when you're in a courtroom, the oath that they've taken, the judges, the members of HMRC, Customs and Revenue, the police, almost all the members of the armed forces, they've actually taken an oath of allegiance to the crown, and that oath is to defend the trust in effect at any cost. So that's why the judges will bend, they'll bend bars with lies. It doesn't matter what you put in front of them, they can't allow the machine to crack, because once it cracks, that's why there's no forgiveness of debt for the Greeks. That's why there's no forgiveness in a courtroom. That's why all the talking of forgiving the debt for Africa. Can you remember in the 80s or early 90s or mid 90s? They'll never forgive it, because once they allow forgiveness, the game's up. Forgive it there, forgive it everywhere. And that's not the nature of what they want. They don't want forgiveness, they want control, coercion, fear, and that's the agenda that keeps this whole clown car going down the road. So with that, let's take a small break, and then it's 9:15. Thank you. Okay, so to continue, one of the things that I'd like to sort of touch on now is, as far as ReMovement's concerned, we've touched on some of the aspects of the currency devaluation that's been caused sort of by what's called quantitative easing. You've heard of this, QE, maybe Queen Elizabeth I, Queen Elizabeth II. That they instigated in the United States, where the Federal Reserve are pumping $30 billion every month into the United States stock market. And that's why the stock markets are on all-time highs. It's not because people are buying it, it's because corporations are buying it. The next part then is, it didn't work in the United States, QE1, QE2 or QE3, and then what we have then, lo and behold, in the European Union, the European Central Bank, is it Mario Draghi, I think, he then decides, well, we're going to try the same in Europe. And they're going to put something like 1.2 trillion into the markets by sometime early 2016. And what you've got to remember, therefore, is it's a devaluation. Yeah, that's what it's doing to your money. If you've got 1,000 apples in a barrel and you've got 1,000 pound notes, and each apple is worth £1, and then someone comes along and multiplies the money supply up to 10,000, then your apples aren't worth £1 each anymore. Yeah, they've been devalued by a factor of 10. So this is what they're doing. They're actually devaluing the money supply, and at the same time, though, prices are going up, and all the so-called economic measures, or checks and balances, as some people would say, are all out of kilter. The Bank of England, in its quarterly pronouncement, I think it's called monetary reform, states, I think it's first quarter 2014, the statement is that most people have misconstrued the way that money is created or comes into being, it says in that document. A lot of the academics and the textbooks have got it wrong. It's quite incredible how we got it wrong. And what they say now is that there doesn't have to be money in the account now before money is lent. All that has to happen is that the bank issues a loan, and simultaneously a deposit is created on the other side of the ledger in the bank account for the borrower. So now we don't have a cart before the horse, we don't have a cart and we don't have a horse. And that's the official way now that money comes into being, that all that has to happen is an entry onto the ledger. So when people ask where does the money with WeRe Bank come from, what we have is a much more cast iron and much more rigid agreement and contactability for what's called the checkbook money, monetary unit of account, or bank ledger money that we use, which is the same as all the other banks and institutions, because around about 98% of all the money in the world that is used is checkbook money, or what's called bank ledger money, monetary unit of account. There's only about 2% that's physical cash. We referred to that earlier with what's called M1 and M1 and M2 money that the Chancellor of the Exchequer used to refer to in the budget. So when money's moving around the planet, you don't have people with saddlebags walking up and down the high street, or people with Brinks map vans delivering 150, 200,000 pounds worth of money to someone who's just sold his house. It's all done electronically. Now, the big mystery on all of this is, why is there so much money being generated, supposedly, yet the bottom line is that there's more taxation and more austerity thrown at you. And that's everyone here. Whether you're on a disability, you're having your disability benefits cut back. You're told there's no money for your pay rises. There's no money for the NHS. There's no money for the roads. There's no money anywhere. Where's it all gone? You know? Yet there is money for the HS2 vanity project, for the high-speed train. There's money for all these civil engineering projects and smart roads. There's money for the cameras. There's money for the police, who now resemble occupying troops on the street. They've got tasers, they've got the cuffs, they've got the what's the spray, the CS sprays. They've got stab vests on. They've got military type hats and pads all over them. You know, so it is it is a situation where it's almost like it is a country under occupation. So the idea is, where's some of the money coming from? So what's going to happen over the next few months? The system is going to irrevocably break down. Okay? It's on its way, and it's got to go that way because it's planned that way from both sides. Whether you say it's the white side of the square or the dark side of the square, that's the way it's got to go. This catalyst's got to be applied because we've got like a blocked drain now. And where humanity's going to move when that drain's blocked is the fork in the road. Now, if the global banking elite and the global banking cartel have their way, it's going to be an absolute disaster, and it's going to mean the problem, reaction, solution situation where you are pleading, just do anything but get me my pizza and beer back, or my steel-belted radials, or, you know, my fridge filled again. And they'll be offering all sorts of sexy solutions, and one is a central or global currency, what's called, born on something called special drawing rights, SDRs. So that's now the super bullshit currency on top of the QE money that nobody's got, that the ECB and the Federal Reserve and all these other banks are lending. So it's just lunacy. It's the emperor's clothes, you know, the parable or tale. Everybody's pretending that the emperor's not naked when in fact it is. So if we just looked then at, say, well, what would be some of the ways through this? One part of it is going to be certain parties are trying to get what's called the global treasury accounts, or prepaid treasury, some refer to it as global collateral accounts, released. So that's the money that's on the planet that has been sequestrated, stolen, hidden, taken from you by the wicked stepfather, which are these rogue regimes and governments operated by the revenue, the Masonic order, and the global banking elite. And they've told you there's no money left. But they've got it, and the one thing for sure is, if there's no money on the planet, then where's it all gone? And why are you walking around with your knees and your jeans ripped out when they're walking around in some quite incredible Armani suits and they've got multi-billion yachts? It isn't just that, it's the people like the Bransons, the Lord Sugars, and all these other so-called movers and shakers who are all in the club. And so once they're in the club, that's it. They're sworn to secrecy. They get, they get their black or even credit limitless Amex cards, and they can go and buy and do whatever they want within reason. Well, not even within reason sometimes. So if we looked at where is there a method of generating money for a political movement, then a political ideology has to have a source of funding. So WeRe has been predominantly created to be a repository for the funds that will or can eventually be issued when these global collateral accounts get opened. And what we mean by that is money available to the people, not in some utopian sort of shark feeding frenzy where you're all out bidding each other for Ferraris, but on a meaningful, should we say, a meaningful progression borne out by not necessarily having a currency physically in your hand, but having the means of paying it and having the checks cleared. Because a checkbook will give you instant access to money from £1 or 1 unit of currency up to how many zeros or ones and zeros you can put on the instrument. And so what it does is it prevents there being a requirement for an absolute, bank of printing presses printing out some type of stagflationary type money, which has always been a problem in the past for any regime or any country that's ever gone into stagflation, where they just got to keep printing more money, and it just doesn't mean anything because the value has gone out of it. So that's in part what WeRe is there for, to act as this repository to help people to get through the implosion of the currency, the global currency agenda that the elite have got on record as having. If it doesn't go that way and the global collateral accounts get opened, it's a repository for you to be able to look back at a bank that was formed pre the major problem or meltdown, and to have some degree of confidence in it, because it was a bit of an oracle. It foretold what was going to happen. It was positioned before it was going to happen, and certain people had stuck their necks out or on the line to show it can be done, and these are ways that we can ensure it's viable and it works. So how we actually do that, there are two things. If we're going to go forward, and no matter what comes in the future over the next sort of 18 months to maximum 2 years, the way this agenda seems to be unfolding now, is if it all goes our way and we can build up a realistic movement, then one thing we need to do is to generate revenue, and it shouldn't be coming from you. There's something that you might have seen on the site, which is an instrument that I've come up with, and it's called FCUTT. Yeah? So this is what we want to do to the bankers and the major global corporate international stock market interests that have infected the country here. We're going to fuck them. And what we're fucking them with is something called, I see what you're thinking, it's that word. No, it's not. It stands for Financial Commercial UK Transaction Tax. So FCUTT, Financial Commercial UK Transaction Tax, and that is a 1% tax on every transaction that the banks, the stock markets, the over-the-counter market, the London Metals Exchange, the London Bullion Exchange make LCH, which is LCH clearing, SWIFT, yeah, CHAPS, all these amounts of money that go through. And if I think in 2013, the total amount of revenue that went through those facilities, including what's called Bar X, which is Barclays clearing, was 1,845 trillion went through in 2013. A 1% tax on that is minuscule. You know, they wouldn't even feel it. Yeah, so it would bring us in about 1.84 trillion in revenue, and they wouldn't even feel it. So don't talk about a 30% haircut on the Greeks by them going to raid their accounts now. Have you seen what they're suggesting? Why don't we do a nice haircut, a very small trim, on Cameron and his goon friends in the city that wouldn't even feel it? And just so that you know what that is, that would allow all taxation in the UK to be removed virtually overnight. That means no more parking fees, no more no more speed cameras, no more poll tax, no more PAYE, no more self-assessment, no more, bedroom tax, no more fuel tax. So instead of you paying £1, 14 at the pump, how about 14 pence at the pump? It could all be done. It's nothing, yeah? Because about 85% on your fuel is government taxation. And that would still bring in that 1% on the financial transactions, that would still bring in 3 times more than the entire taxation revenue by HMRC and UK Treasury, which is approximately, in the moment, I think about 640 odd billion. So all the taxes combined in the country only bring in 640 million, and 1% on that, as that taxation element would cure everything. NHS could be funded. There wouldn't be any problem with schools. So basically multiply the availability of that money by a factor of 3, and that's only at 1%. You know, they wouldn't think twice about whether, they raised VAT from 17.5% to 20%. You know, there's not too much compassion there when they're putting their figures up. So it could go as high as, let's say 5. But the bottom line is there's an answer, and therefore there is no politician in the country on any side of the aisle, any colour or persuasion, who can argue against it. So wherever you are in the future, if you end up on Question Time, if you end up on the local radio station talking to some MP or get the opportunity, this is what they're hiding, and this is what that chap, this is what this guy is there to ensure doesn't happen. Yeah? The city remembrancer, to make sure no punitive taxes go out that will harm the interests in the City of London. So this isn't an ideology that's got no jacket and it's got no shoes. It's got a good set of shoes on it for running. It's got a good jacket, and it's got a good route map for where it's going to go. So also, from what I mentioned earlier in the evening, we've got people joining from all over. It's something that's touched a vein. The genie, in my opinion, is out of the bottle. I don't think it's going to get out again, and my mission and purpose is to ensure that we, as a pack, not only now have we got the scent, but we've got the knowledge and arguments to track down the prey, because they're out there now and you can smell it, and all we need to do is get into this mindset now. Don't be bamboozled by the complexity of the argument and the economic model and the fact that we have to look at the business cycle, or we've got to look at the mathematical aspects on a quantum computer before we can decide whether we can afford this or that. It's so simple, it just defeats the mind. The way they create the money, the way the trick is created, is just so simple. It just defeats and gives you, you just get a headache for trying to think it through, because you're turning yourself inside out, and that isn't really what needs to be thought through. So a lady spoke to me at the break, and she was talking to me about, well, what can we do if the future isn't going to be so bright? And part of what I'm going to just touch on now represents the idea now, me sharing the idea that the paper that you've got in your pocket isn't really worth so much. Yeah. It's okay in the UK here, but if you decided you wanted to go anywhere else, nobody's going to be taking it off you. Equally, if you bring some euros from Europe, you can't pay for a pint of beer at the pub, or you can't do anything with it. Taxi driver won't take it off you. So it's a very, very sensitive instrument that you carry around and you put so much emphasis on. So if we looked at the basis of, let's say, I now say 18 months' time, the money that you have in your pocket won't buy you anything. Either that's come about by a collapse in the currency markets, or it's come about by some other type of agenda which has caused you some sort of financial hardship. Then it might be a good idea now to start thinking, talking among yourselves, watching the press, finding out who's saying what, whoever you think that might be that you can trust, and finding out, right, if I wanted to divest myself of my worthless, toxic currency, this fiat rubbish that we've been convinced or told is worth something, if I was going to get rid of it and make a out plan or a grab bag for no matter what happened in the future, what would I do with it? What should I actually do with it? So you could invest in art, you could buy diamonds, you could invest in real estate, you could do anything. But what you might want to look at is looking to convert it yourself, not me, you, into a gold-backed asset. And don't forget, if crisis comes, then gold will always get you through. It'll get you through and get you to where you need to go when paper won't. You physically can't carry enough paper, and even if you go to the bank now and try and get more than, I think, 2,500, you have to get at least give them a few days' notice, and if you go over 5. So a lot of people who think they have money, when push comes to shove and the credit cards aren't working, they'll find they haven't really got much to spend, and this is how the rich get toppled usually in these periods. So one of the ideas may be for you to look at something that is a piece of technology that we've come across, and I had the idea and then I couldn't find out how to do it, but then a couple of days later somebody sent me the technology where it can be done. And the idea is, when ReMovement relaunches with the website, we're going to encourage people to come on board and join by paying either monthly, quarterly, or an annual fee. It's the same as it is at the moment. The only thing at the moment is we have to take cash. Okay? That's what it's been moving as since they closed the accounts down. We're looking at alternative means, but what's come out of the adversity here is the idea that what we can do is, we've got the time-based unit of currency now, the RE. Okay? That means that's an equipartition of energy no matter where you are in the world. So whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in East Europe, or whether you're in the city of London, 1 hour's work is a time-based unit and you get the same unit of pay. It's the same for everybody. The other aspect then, is to run through here, and we see now, in fact I'll just pause that a minute before I show you that. If we look at what the price of gold should probably be at the moment, from that historical chart that I showed you, how they've changed it, the price is being deliberately suppressed, and the reason it's being suppressed is, if you look at the New York Stock Exchange and you'll see the price of New York, the futures market for gold, it's always priced in dollars. And you'll see that it's around, I think it's trading at about 1,300 an ounce at the moment. And the problem with that, though, it's a futures contract and it's based on what's called infinite supply. Yeah? When you come to try and take physical delivery of the metal, though, that's another issue. Because at the moment, everybody's gold seems to have gone missing. Yeah? Now, this will come out soon, but WeRe Bank has been approached by a very large trust that's involved in this global collateral account rigmarole, and they have, according to their documentation, which I'll be getting fairly soon, they have a rather large amount of gold that's been held for them in Switzerland by UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland. So if we end up going that way, there will be enough, as long as we can get them to allow us to have it. And why they do that, I have no idea. But that's part of the plan. However, that being said, if we were looking to turn your worthless money now, while you have it, into a usable type of currency, then I might suggest the following. 1 gram of gold at the moment is about £26. Yeah? You go on the internet and look at bullion.uk or whoever, and you'll see a little gram, which is probably about the size of your fingernail, like that. If you go for an ounce, a troy ounce, it's about 720, I think about 725 an ounce. But what we would like you to do is consider the following. It isn't available yet, so don't get panicking. Is to make an election as to how you want to pay and be paid. Because don't forget, all the contributions you make are all being credited into your account. Yeah? So you're paying your £10 to join ReMovement, and on your WeRe bank account, you can see that that's being credited in. Yeah? So you're not losing, that's actually being credited in. We're taking sterling in and giving Re to you in the account. So look at us as an antidote to the toxicity in the world, in the global financial market. So you've got all that toxic fiat currency rubbish that's going to implode one day or just be worth nothing. And on the other side, we've got something that's trying to mop it up and convert it while we can. So it would be a very good idea if you saw something worthwhile over there, and you could see into the future, and maybe some of you can, and you saw something that, I don't know, let's see, just straws of hay on a bale lying around, and somebody says, well, what we'll do is we'll take those worthless pieces of bits and we'll allow you to have that over there in exchange, but all you've got to do is hand them over, then that would be the idea. So the plan is to make you think that what you could do is the following. You could still carry on making your monthly payment or your quarterly payment, but instead of making the quarterly payment in sterling, you turn it into a quarterly payment in gold. It could be 2 grams or it could be whatever. What we will do though is we will convert that and then give it back to you in physical currency, a note. And what we have is the technology to take small amounts of gold and actually put them through, like, either, it's not a leafing process, it's a powder type process, and we laminate it between 2 pieces of laminate, the same size as a note. Has anybody seen these notes from Canada and Australia and places like that, where you can wash them, you can put them in your washing machine, you can keep them in your shorts and go swimming? So the process is, we take the gold, we put it into the notes are then delivered to you, or you pick them up. They're assayable, because you can either test them with what's called light spectrometry, or you can test them with ultrasound. Some very specific ways of telling. So each note, depending on its value, will have a bar on it. So on one side, it'll have the Re symbol, and it'll say how many Re are on the note, and then you'll have these bars running across. So it'll have 1 bar, 2, or 3, and that will then be the amount of loading that the gold has been placed into the note. So the beauty of this, though, is the following. That would be okay in and of itself if the gold was only worth 25 pounds an ounce. But it isn't worth 25, because what we'll do is we revalue the value of gold. So we revalue it by a factor of 8. And that is only in part to bring it up to where the true historical value of it should be if, where you saw the chart earlier, where it was going along for all those hundreds of years and doing nothing, and then it jumps. So what that's actually showing you is reverse the logic that if it should have been constant for all those hundreds of years, and then it takes a jump, then this is what we... Could I borrow your... Is it? Yep, thanks. If we just quickly fly through this, you don't need to take too much of this in at the moment. It's just to show that 1717, that was the price of gold. Today, there's 64 million people there. In England, there was 5.5, Ireland, Scotland and Wales here. So, 7-fold increase in population. Okay? But there's been a 20,000% increase in the price of gold. GDP per capita, 1717, was about £6.6. That's like 1.7 troy ounces. Today, it's around about there. So, we have, that's the calculation to put it where roughly, based on that maths, it should be trading today. But that's borne out about because of the inflation and the currency devaluation in part, not the investment content. So what we're looking at here is that GDP figure, again, 9.6 million in 1717 with gold at £3.17 and 10 versus a GDP now with 65 million people and gold at 725. So from 1517 to 1917, we go back even further, that's 400 years of parity. That means equality in a gold price. 400 years, So from 2017 to 1717, we've got 300 years, but at 186-fold increase. So that's only occurred over the last, as it says here, 100 years. And how? Because of this monetization. So can any people remember what happened to the Italian lira in the 80s? You remember? It was a phenomenal run on it, and so you needed so many lira, nobody could print notes with enough ones and zeros on it. And so what they did is they devalued it. So it's a common phenomenon to devalue a currency, and what we'd create here is the equivalent of you having a super Swiss franc. It would be portable. It's a bearer instrument. So it isn't actually just worth something hypothetically, it's worth something real. And you could either look at it like this: you've got 8 times the value, or you need 1/8 of what you think you need. And the technology is available. There's nobody in the UK that can do it. There's only one company in the United States, but we're also looking at getting that technology sourced for over here. So it's not something that's going to happen in the next week or two, but it's something that I think everybody in the room and everywhere I go should be thinking, that if things are going to start getting a little bit dodgy, a la what's happening in Greece at the moment, people queuing up at the ATMs trying to get what out to do what with, then maybe there's something else as an alternative. So this is just to let you know, we're thinking of these solutions. If the policy documents of the European Central Bank, the IMF and the World Bank are to be believed, that's in part what they're suggesting. That when everything goes pear-shaped, they're looking to try and introduce a sort of a gold-backed currency. Yeah, the Chinese are talking about it, the Russians are talking about it, but their gold-backed currency will be something like, here's the note, supposedly backed up to the extent of 20%, 30%, 40% of gold kept somewhere else in a treasury somewhere. Not actually in the note. Nobody's thought of it before. Nobody's come up with it. There's nowhere on the internet apart from one place that does it as a almost an Art Deco type of gift voucher. But I had the idea quite some time ago. The ideas I'd like to think are organic and quite inspired. So it would be a very useful thing for people within an identifiable trading group to be able to use amongst themselves, which was bomb-proof. Not only that, if you had the unit of currency in your hand, and why I've come up with the idea is to just give it what's called an IOU, International Outreach Unit. The problem with the RE in time at the moment is the time-based unit. If you go to the local garage and ask the guy if he'll do some repairs for you, he was going to want cash. Yeah, he ain't going to want a check, and he doesn't want to know these RE units. We can't quite see what they are. And equally, if he wants to go and buy building materials and join in, he's got to go and buy the materials. And if he goes into Travis Perkins, or if he goes into the local, the local B&Q, they want money off him. However, if he goes to someone who's got slightly, he's got a less commercial bent, and even maybe, let's say, buying food from an Indian restaurant or somewhere like that, people who appreciate the value of gold, these people will take a gold-backed unit of currency. One, they'll know about it, and secondly, they'll want it. Because people will always want a durable form of wealth which is transportable and can be held in a note. You can take it anywhere, you can give it to anyone, it'll get you across a border, it'll get you past a checkpoint, it'll get you anywhere, which a piece of paper won't, especially if we have rampant inflation and if, the curtains come down maybe like they will. Disappeared again. It's not the same person that comes up, by the way, when I go down. We do a swap. My turn now. So that's where the wealth has been devalued. This is just a little, because we're coming up to the end now. It's getting a bit warm, is it? Do you want me to open this? Oh. Very quickly, the principle of $1 of capital, or £1 should be this. $1 of capital is simply the principle that nobody be permitted to create credit out of thin air, which is what they're doing. They're counterfeiting it, they're Xeroxing the notes, and that's all they're turning out. More rubbish, toxic, fiat, Babylonian crap money that nobody really wants, but we're all convinced we do. Thus artificially expanding the spendable supply of money in the system. This and only this is the reason for all the bubbles and financial collapses throughout history. The sleight of hand is why the tulip mania crisis happened in 1637. It's why we had the crash in 1873, 1929. It's why the tech market blew up in 2000. It's why we had a crash in 2008 in the housing market. It is why we're threatened with collapse in Europe now. It's a scam as old as the money changes during the time of Hammurabi. And until we stop it there, it will never be a stability in the banking and financial system. The sleight of hand is in fact exactly identical in mathematical and economic impact to counterfeiting of a nation's currency, a crime which we all should recognise, condemn, and when it occurs, the punishment should include both imprisonment and forfeiture of every dollar of ill-gotten gain. I can't put it better than that guy, Carl Denninger, who writes on an article on a website called Market Ticker. And my proposal at the moment to all these banking people who phone me all the time, I've offered, just so that you know where this is all coming from, I've offered this hand or an olive branch to them. I've actually said to them, they have no idea who we are, they've got no idea who's backing this movement, they've got no idea on any level who and what's behind it, and so they should tread a little bit more gently. Yeah? Because at the end of it, we'll be standing and they'll be probably running for the hills, and they fight it and defend it with an arrogance is only mismatched by their stupidity. Yeah? They're not paid enough to get on the phone and say the things they do. In their complete ignorance, they march in and have this complete mindset of they are right when they're not. So we've got this overriding situation where we'll endure. I've offered this olive branch to them and saying that we are in fact the banker's prayer, because all of these banks now, every single one, would fail what's called these stress tests that the Bank of England and the International Monetary Fund has put on them. That's because they've got so much debt on their books, they're never going to move it. And you people can't move it because you're not getting pay increases anymore, and there's no more money anyway. You know, the country's turned into a service industry, and all the manufacturing's gone, and there's no industry in this country anymore. So by negotiating or dealing with us, every check that you send out allows them to pay down the bad debt on their ledger. If only they saw common sense. So whether they come around to do it or not isn't our problem. Their main concern should be what's actually going to happen when the music stops. So whether they want to do it or not isn't the point. The key, though, for the future is more checks, not fewer. Yeah, because the ideas behind it are solid, and there are no holes in the structure. So that's coming up to a bit of a review now as we come to the end. We've got to act now. I mean, theoretically, it could be too late. And depending where, these meetings go in the coming weeks, the numbers, we hope, will increase around the country, because everyone I'm going to now, the numbers are consistently climbing. More people are bringing more people on. And it's one of the few ways that you can actually come to where it's got an international flavour, it's not parochial, it's not based just on I don't know, another political debate in Westminster by people who were bought and paid for by the banks in the first place. So then, you can send petitions, you can have 100,000 people standing on the street protesting. As far as the government's concerned, if you're all going home and you're in bed by 9 o'clock, they've won. The only thing that will make a change is if the same number or more people are still on the street at 6 o'clock the next morning. It might have to go that way. I don't know. This isn't something necessarily I advocate, but this is the problem with the nightly protest or the London March. But everybody gets the banners and go down and they protest against austerity, and then nothing changes because they understand the psychology of people. That, these days, and you look back into the 60s, people are a lot more radical, a lot more ready to protest, and more than today. I think they actually called it social embourgeoisement. And the theory was that if you got the masses sufficiently out of poverty and to a level of a fair degree of cultural and social comfort, that you would take all the rebelliousness out of them. If you kept them down too low, you would always foment dissent, and you'd have tyranny and you'd have plots and protests. But elevate them to a sufficient level of comfort, and it would all go. And historically, I think that's what they've done, and that's why the benefit system prevails so much, and why they've taken a liberty with that. So stop everything, join ReMovement, because until we stop doing what we're doing, we're just going to be delivering the whole thing. Anybody saw a Fight Club when they had the police commissioner on the floor in the men's bathroom? And he was about to launch a vigorous investigation. And the dialogue is that he would call off his investigation because, as they said, we're the people that drive your ambulances. We drive your taxis, we deliver your pizzas, we educate your children, we look after you when you're sick, we do the shopping for you, so it's you people that do all this, without us, they have nothing. And so this is the thing we need to get back to, showing the fact that the power is your work energy. Yeah? And as long as we are having it stolen from us, it's not going to go very, very well for us in the future. And the designs and plans aren't the most friendly, and when you've got Soros and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett all talking about reducing the population on the planet, and this and that, they're not talking about it as a joke. And a lot of it is what's called flag flying, or kite flying. They put these ideas out and they suggest these new things that are coming, and if people don't do anything about it, then it's an inferred consent. Because nobody gets up and does anything anymore. We just become a little bit too complacent that there's going to be a Hollywood ending. And I don't subscribe to that. So the drive for membership will be tell everyone shamelessly. If you believe in it, then tell them. Don't stand by and think, oh God, I should have asked her out. Ask her out, and if they think you're a lunatic, then okay, they'll still talk to you again. Don't say too much. The idea is, next time, bring someone else to the meeting. Bring another person. Bring someone. Just encourage them, and we'll grow it. We've got to get to these large amounts, and we've got to do it quite quickly. The promissory notes, the checking facility is holy ground. There aren't any holes in it. If they want to dismantle that, they've got to dismantle their entire edifice of financial commercial transactions in the country. Nobody has done it so far, and all these things about a bank not being recognised. All that recognised means is not identified. But if you look at someone the second time, you recognise them. So that's really what they need to be doing. That we're not authorised by the Bank of England. What, a private corporation recognising another private corporation? That's like phoning Mercedes-Benz up and saying, would you like BMW to start as a competitor in Bavaria? No, don't recognise them. Or these other sort of statements they make that we only issue some notional currency called the ReMovement. As far as the people in Australia are concerned, by the way, my name's Richard of England. And I'm in charge of something called the Lawful Bank. And they mix it all up and it all comes... But so people are battling with this in Australia, New Zealand, in Canada. It's all very, it's all going very, very well. We have people from Germany that have joined. I said Ireland, Belfast, Estonia, Bolivia, America, and the Filed Coast, St Anne's. Okay, so scrip introduced. That's on the agenda. I said I would like to try and do it without, but the reason without doing scrip, that means something in the hand. But why I think it might need to go that way is that the small businessman and the small trader and the artisan and the worker would be very amenable to having a gold-backed piece of currency in his hand. And so the idea would be, not only would it have the value, but it would be so much in demand you couldn't get enough of it, because that then would inflate it. And that's one of the secrets about things like the Swiss franc. So if you're walking around with a gold-backed unit of currency in your pocket, think about it, that instead of it being worth, let's say there was 1 gram of gold put into the note, instead of it being worth 25, let's say it's worth 8 times that, then immediately, who's the idiot is going to not want it? So what you've done is you've been able to hand over a smaller amount of physical metal and have an 8-fold increase. And it's only what we say it is. It's us within the club agreeing it's worth. Doesn't matter what they say outside or whether they come up to you and say, oh, you can't do that. The government can't devalue. The government, Gordon Brown couldn't sell, 1/3 of the nation's gold, was it, in 2002? When the Sunday Times had still been campaigning to try and find out who gave him permission to do it. Where did it go? So this is the idea that we come in, we make our own rules, it's our own ideas, we have our own gold-backed currency. You can spend it with yourselves, or you can go over and spend it with whoever you want. And the idea is that you divest yourself of whatever you don't want as the agenda unfolds. And if it starts to look more scary, more quicker, the biggest problem will be finding enough bullion for us to make the conversion into. But as you can see, you make the conversion and you carry the notes. This isn't for us, It isn't for us to say, you give it to us and we'll keep it in a bank vault here for you. Honest, it's there. It comes straight back to you, And so you deliver it, you have it, it's yours. Then you do whatever you want with it. There'll be a small transaction charge on it. I don't know what that would be. Maybe we go for 1%. 1% of it. But as we've increased it by 8, I don't know. I haven't actually thought of that yet. But the fact of the matter is, as more and more people come on board, This is the key. This is what we want. We want the numbers. We want people joining. Because that's what it is. It's lots of people paying little amounts, not a few paying lots, which will successfully drive this movement along. So I've said to some people before, we want 60,000 people in a football stadium by October. You know? And, you know, I don't know, 20, 30,000 turning up for the stadium manager to say we can't come in. You know, it's the way it needs to be built. It needs to be people and ordinary people, you know. We create an internal currency war then between the time-backed unit and the gold-backed unit to see which will prevail, because they'll be linked. And just so that you know, the relinking will link the one RE to around about £15. Because in the old document it says for 1 hour's work you'll get about 12 RE. Yeah, for anyone who's read the master document. But with this, what would happen is you'd get 1 RE for half an hour. You get 2 RE for the hour, taking it to about £30 the hour, which is gold backed, right? So if you could see what that would do to the value of the promissory note, it would jump the promissory note from 148,000 or 296,000 as it is now, up to something like 2.2 million. Okay, so don't worry too much about that, because this is one of the things that you just got to realise, that what we stated before is that the value of the RE unit for purchasing power is, if somebody goes into a shop, they can either pay £6 for the bottle of wine or 3 RE. Yeah, so to give a preference to the retailer to take our currency and you to end up paying less. But it also works the other way. If you've got a £150,000 promissory note and you've got 148,000 RE on the promissory note, yeah? The 148,000 has a buying power of 296 sterling. So a very good idea would be to pay off the promissory note sometime in RE. Yes, people with this? Following it just about? Okay, it's a little bit, but it's just to protect those people who've always thought, oh wow, you know, what's the RE unit for? Why has he got 2 currencies on there? It's an ultimate protection. So anyone that's reasonably good at maths can see the logic in that. Yeah, you only need half the number of RE to pay down the sterling on the other side. So we create a currency war, we find out the time and the gold, how they fare. The good thing is that we are going to create this, what's called, and this is why it's functional, it's current, it's new, no one else is doing it. Yeah, maybe the Greeks should have been over here listening to it. We create our own universal reserve currency. And we just create it, and it's gold backed. And it's yours, you can spend it, you do whatever you want with it, you can hoard it. And it comes in an easily transportable way, just like, and it's the same thickness as your ordinary notes, except the imagination would be like gold leaf. If you can imagine how gold leaf is. So it would be a band almost looking like gold leaf in stripes through the note. Might not even have a number on. You just know 1 bar is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3. And we put some braille dots on if you're visually impaired, as they say. And it would be a very interesting commodity. And the thing is, with small groups or small ideas, we can get the drop on the international cartels. And what we see at the moment, just on that point, if you think the check facilities aren't workable and can't go, Barclays have just introduced a new initiative. Has anybody seen it or heard of it? Yeah, okay. Yeah. And what I finished the meeting last week on Sunday in Glastonbury, and on Tuesday, the co-host's wife, she received an email from Barclays transaction team, and what it says is, "Dear Lucy, would you like to help us change 100 years of checkbook history?" Really? Read on. I thought they were phasing checkbooks out. Who do you know in here? Does anybody in here know anyone that's not a businessman that's got a checkbook? They don't exist anymore. Oh, maybe you have a checkbook. Okay, well, no hands were shown. Have you? Okay. What do you use it for? Just business. I said apart from business.
Social.
Okay, right. So nobody, for the record, apart from a business owner, no. And so what they've said now is that they're going to do a trial. Begins in 2016. And you can sign a check, make out a check, up to the value of 500 and have it cleared within, I think they say 24 hours, by you taking a photograph of it on your iPhone 4 or 5 on the Barclays app. Incredible, but aren't we doing that already? Except for much larger amounts. And the fact is that we do give you the ability to upload the details, or you put the details on your own account. And what we would have soon, as soon as we can get our heads above water a bit more, we'll even have the facility where you can upload the check, if you wish, onto your account so you can see it. So that's just to say that, we've got the ideas and they don't, and this is a new ball game on the park. It's changing very fast, and it needs to stay organic, and we've got them. I think we've got them on the run, and they should start playing with us, playing ball. Otherwise, we just, we move to the other side of the stadium. So, to recap, Unique Initiative, call to arms, it goes on. Fair and equitable, available, radical, Bank of England, all the rest of it, and then. If anybody wants to join this evening, if they haven't, then we get an envelope for you. Just write on the envelope your details, put your name on, put your address on, put your email, put a telephone number on, put what you want to have, and then we'll collect that from you and then get these checkbooks mailed out. The checkbooks now actually have your name printed on them. So this is the good news for the lady there whose checkbook didn't get delivered to her. Now the checkbooks are coming not only with the account number on, but also your name. So they look a lot nicer. And so that's the good news. And that's it. So these are some of the ideas. At the moment, we're having to take cash through the post. We're looking to change that when ReMovement launches soon. Then instead of the £10 monthly contributions coming in necessarily in envelopes, there's possibly a facility that we are going to go on the internet with it again, with another company. However, it's always a bit of a dodgy proposition. So if we don't go that way, you will then have a choice. You'll be told about it. You'll find it on the website. It'll give you a choice of how you're probably going to want to pay, whether you're paying in normal sterling, carry on just as you are, or whether you want us even to take the sterling. You'll have the choice, and then convert that into the scrip or the gold-backed unit of currency, and then we return that to you. Or you come and collect it, pick it up, do whatever you want with it. So that's the idea, but then we get leverage, and then we get moving. So some good ideas. I hope you've enjoyed them. Thank you. You've listened very well. It's now 10:30, and I think we should have just a few fast questions. Nothing too technical, but just so we don't bore too many people. But if you want to go technical, first one. Okay, this lady's just said, when you join, how fast does it take for the checks to arrive? Okay, right. That's a very good question. We used to say up to a month.
5 weeks took me.
5 weeks for the gentleman over there. How long did it? 1 week over there. Okay, so you have... Yeah, well, they will get them, because since when PayPal got closed down on May the 6th, anything that had come in the week before, we hardly had access to the records. At the moment, for people who get let's say we pick the mail up on a Friday, dependent on how much is coming in, and this is the problem, we've got to open the mail, we've got to sort through it, we've got to make sure the promissory notes are done correctly. It's taking now probably about 4 days for us to process that before we post it out, and then it takes about a day to 2 maximum. So at the moment, the turnaround is under a week. There have been people who've had to wait 4 weeks, there have been people who've waited 5. There's a couple of people here who haven't even got one. Hands up, can't do anything about that apart from apologise and say she'll have it dead soon. There you go. But what I would just say quickly, 98%, the statistics are 98% of everybody that has paid and ordered the book has got them. We are always going to get these people like any big organisation, and we haven't even got a big organisation. We've only got 2 or 3 people working for us to do it, and it's a bit of a nightmare. But we're getting there. So hopefully that's answered the question. Yeah.
Just 2 very brief questions. Are you needing volunteers or people to help you with the sort of administrative things? Are you taking on any sort of extra help?
Yes. We've always maintained, and this is for everyone here, that WeRe Bank is labour intensive. We want more people. There's no limit to what we can't do. So, and in part, it isn't that you have to be paid in RE. Yeah, we can pay in sterling. Okay, and that isn't been abrogating the ideology behind it, because what we're looking to do is build these regional units quite quickly. The only thing that prevents it at the moment is where I'm based, because of the technicalities of me having to answer phones and do it all, and where the person's located. For example, in Warrington, they're trying to set up a hub. In Liverpool, they're trying to set up a hub. In Canada, they're also trying to do it. But this is the thing. Yeah, the problem with the phone is it's so energy dependent, and the arguments are so unique. For example, I had the head of legal from South Staffordshire Council on the phone on Friday, and he got into such a state he hung up on me. And then he phoned back and we started all over again. I recorded the conversations. It takes a lot, and you will get, no one can answer the phone because you'll get mauled. They can be very nasty, and the people who are coming through are experts in demoralising and making all sorts of accusations to you on the phone, saying, I don't want to hear, quote from one bank, I don't want to hear about any of that new age bullshit. I want to know how you're going to get the money to us. And so it goes on. So yes, where are you based?
I'm in Manchester.
Manchester. Excellent. If you send me an email, what's your name?
I'm Kim.
Kim. Put Kim in the subject and email me at peter@WeRe.bank. Okay.
Just very quickly, do you have any partnership with any other movements?
Very good question. Did I pay you to ask that? I didn't, did I? I have consistently reached out since 2012 to almost every person or way shower or sage or illuminary in this country to want to work together. Nobody's come back to me. Nobody's offered. I've got fed up of phoning. So, and even, this is a very good point, and I like to emphasize it here by looking at the camera, that it's very interesting with such an amazing idea, as I think it is, and hopefully you do too, the impact it's made, the consequences, and the potential of it. What gets me is why so many of these other people who are doing similar talks and presentations around the country are openly silent on it. Yeah, it's a deafening silence, and the ones that have offered a little bit of, praise have damned it with faint praise. And it, I can't understand it, because what we're doing and what we're achieving here, we've got the attention of the entire UK banking and financial system. There is not one bank in the country that hasn't heard of us. Yeah. So, you know, that's what I'm trying to undo. And if I'm trying to do it, I don't care what they think of me. You know, it's the maxim that, my enemy's enemy is my friend. You know, that's what they should be doing. So that's the question. Yeah, next chap. Thank you.
Peter, can I just ask everyone in here, as well as you, is there anyone who's got a checkbook and paid anything off? And, well, has anyone done that? How much we're talking?
Sorry, I've sent a number of checks. I've paid off student finance, Capital One. I am in the process of waiting for responses, but they haven't zeroed my balance. I have a digital photograph with me today of Capital One statement saying that they've accepted payment for £3,854. And I had a phone call with them today, and they couldn't get anybody to actually answer me because they haven't zeroed the balance. However, I actually have in writing that they've accepted payment for that amount.
Okay, just a quick one. I was down in Glastonbury on Sunday, and a chap came up to me and he showed me the letter from whatever Glastonbury is, it's South Devon District Council, where he successfully cleared 1,383 of his council tax, and what they'd asked for is another cheque to pay off the arrears from the previous year. So it is going. We've had a 92,000 inland revenue VAT bill cleared down in London. We've had Barclaycard ones cleared, Amex, Virgin Media. I mean, there's a lot out there on the forum, but one of the things I think... I'll let you finish your question. Okay, the point here, it's a very good question, and it's nothing that we shy away from, or I'm shying away from. It's the beginning of a skirmish. It's the beginning before a battle. We're in the battle, but it's going to get worse. So there will always be at the beginning with something like this apparent victories, and then there will also be the next part where people have cheques returned to them with all sorts of statements, which I've actually addressed tonight. WeRe Bank isn't recognised by the Bank of England. It isn't approved by the FCA. Yeah, it isn't this, it isn't that. The bottom line is, it's either paid or it's not paid. Yeah? If it's paid with the same instruments that they use on a daily basis, that's it. The next stage is to give the notarial protest, to stay and stick with your guns, because what they're doing is they're shaking you down. They're just trying to say, no, it's not paid. They're returning the cheque. You don't know whether they've cleared their side of the ledger or not. As far as we're concerned, as long as you don't go over the 150, the moment you write the cheque, it's cleared. And this is the argument. If they refuse it, what are they in the business of doing? Do they want money? Is it money you want? If it's money that you want, then why don't you come and ask for it? Yeah? They're in the business of it, and that's what we're giving them. If they refuse to do it, it's in effect financial apartheid. Yeah? We're like the black man in South USA in the 1960s, you know? Okay.
So just one more. Has anyone's mortgage been paid off for this?
Yes, several have.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
Now, there you go. What seems to happen, just as I can qualify there, is there seems to be certain limits that have gone through, and some larger amounts tend to ring different bells. So it is at the moment a bit like a patchwork quilt. Some are getting through for certain reasons, some are not getting through. But the bottom line is, the more that come on board, the more checks that start going out. Don't forget, at the moment, there's probably plus over 15,000 checks out there. They haven't all been signed for. Some people haven't used a book. Others have gone crazy and almost got rid of them overnight. But they understand what it's about. Some people are being a bit silly with them, and they're giving us not such a good name when they're trying to pay their credit. Emily, wherever you are, she went out with the first few weeks. She went down, paid all her credit cards off, got all the balances zeroed, and then went and run them all the way up again. You know, which is not exactly in the spirit of what we wanted to do. It was always as a last resort, don't forget. This wasn't for you to get a new car or new shoes. It was for people whose backs were against the wall and they were just about to be seized of property, repossessed, taken to court and you know, just ruined. So that's what we did it for, and that's ultimately the bedrock on which it stands. And the fact is, we're either right or we're wrong. We can't be both.
So what about me? I'm not in arrears.
Yeah.
If I've got the option, if I've got a chance to
Yeah.
get off the mortgage.
Yeah. Perfect.
Am I being wrong for doing that?
No, no, not at all.
I'm not in arrears.
No, no, no,
It is.
no, no,
But if
no.
I can pay it off in one go,
Yeah.
am I wrong for doing that?
Not at all. Right? And the reason,
I think
just,
when that happens, that's when you'll get the stadium full of people.
yeah, yeah. But also, when we get the stadium full of people and they're doing that consistently, then we're going to be in a situation where, you know, we won't need the stadium of people anymore. And this is the great thing. This is why Tom Crawford's case was not allowed to be a winner. And this is why none of these mortgage cases in the courts are allowed to be a winner. Because when one wins, that's it. It's tilt on the machine. The game's over. So the people who have had their mortgages cleared and had these victories with their note, they all remain very, very quiet about it. Not them, personally, but the fact is, it's not going to be paraded in front of everybody, because what you've got to remember is, what we can only make them do so much. Ultimately, we can't, for example, if they cleared the mortgage, the next part then is making them hand over the title deeds to you, you know? And there's things we can make them do, and there's other things we can't make them do. So I can make you do certain things now, but there's certain things I can't make you do. Because if you're in possession of an object, I can't necessarily make you return it to me because I don't even know where it is. You know, like if it's a mortgage deed or a title deed or a letter of credit or whatever. So that's what is always the thing to bear in mind. Just because they're mouthing like this and saying, we don't do this, we don't do that, it doesn't mean that they haven't credited their book and are quite concerned with what they are holding now. And the last place they want you, ultimately, all of you, is in courts of law now, fighting this on the basis that they've paid, and you've paid with a legal and valid instrument. So, anyway, next question, please.
Sorry, Jason McLaren again. Just to go through what I've been through, is I've sent a number of checks from British Gas, E.ON, like I said before, student finance. I have had a couple of checks back, which I've sent a notable protest on, and explained that they must readjust their accounts accordingly, because on my WeRe bank side it showed as clear. So moving on to my question is that obviously once it is clear, have they received funds?
Yeah.
And if they have received funds, obviously do you have a record of the individuals that have taken those funds, so that the next process is if they've then refused or sent back a cheque, our next process is to go, well, you have been paid, please adjust the account, it was paid on this date, so forth.
Okay, very good question. I couldn't repeat all of that, but this is what happens. As soon as you have written the cheque, in effect, we have cleared it. We don't know of it, though, until you enter the details into your account. Yeah? Is everybody aware of that? That you're supposed to go on and then show it. Because we then need to see that you've written it. Because otherwise, we are the last to know. What we do is then we clear it. What the clearing means is that we have now debited your account. Yeah? It's not there, or let's say we've debited it and apportioned it. Yeah? So it's gone from the warehouse, it's now in the delivery bay. Yeah? If someone else goes looking for it now, that same thing in the Amazon warehouse, it's not on the shelf, it's not available anymore, but it's not gone out the building. Yeah? So, what we're waiting for now is the bank, HSBC, Santander, Co-op, whoever, Midshires, to get in touch with us then and ask for it. Okay? Now, as far as you're concerned, you've actually gone through the motion and presented them with the cheque. They've been informed, so they know where it is. It's in the delivery bay, waiting to go to them. And they are the ones who've got to call it forward. Okay? Now, some of them don't get in touch with us, and others do. And they say, right, send it by electronic transfer. What happens then is, we have the option of what we want to do with it. Typically, if we had enough sterling and wanted to pay in sterling, which we don't, then we'd have to, bag it up and send it over. But on a £95,000 mortgage like that, it would be virtually impossible to get the cash. So what we do is we do what they do, is we offer them an electronic transfer of monetary unit of account, checkbook money, or bank ledger money. So we send that to them electronically through a confirmation through our Swallow system email, and then they're instructed that they have the authority to credit their account. So if it's gone from your account, what happens then is if they come back and some have lost the checks, this is what's happening. GE Capital Money have lost it. HSBC have lost the checks. Well, if they've lost the checks, you want your property back. And if you can't get your property back, we can't reissue. Because what they're saying is, just get him to send another check. Has the money been sent to someone? Well, no, it hasn't. But look what would happen if that same thing happened at your bank. Until that check has actually been either stopped or proved that there's no fraud involved, which is what we're saying to them, then we can't expect you to just be asked to sign another check. Because if that check was, say, for 95 again, and that both got cleared, you'd be in a negative situation. So what we say to them is, you've made the mistake, you've made the error, you've now got to come up with a remedy for the customer. And we can't tell you who we've paid it to, because we haven't paid it out. But what you're on the back end of there is a check now floating around in the ether, and nobody knows where it's gone. And as it was sent recorded, invariably, people know it was signed for, and they're not in the business of losing checks, because that's their business. So that's the area that is a bit grey, and that's what they're trying. They're trying every trick in the book to avoid them. But if you hold your ground, it's just like maybe someone from the mafia coming and they demand money off you for protecting your business. And then, they come a week later when they should come monthly. They're shaking you down for more and more. So stand your ground, be firm with them, and that will do. Yeah, sorry again.
Just to follow back to that question, Peter, in that case then, in that scenario, is it for us then to write to the person you've sent the cheque to, or make contact to find out what's happened and what the next process is?
Yeah, what you can also do, and it'll be getting more advanced as the weeks go by, you can also take a copy of your screen. Soon there'll be a facility for you to generate the entry, and you'll have it on a statement. So it'll show WeRe Bank, it'll have your account number, it'll show that it's been cleared and the funds have been debited from the account. So the big question, and maybe I shouldn't be saying it on here, but where's the money? So where is it? Because it's at the delivery bay. We said we've cleared it down. It's not available to you anymore, and we have to do this because otherwise a promise without any intention isn't a promise. So if I promise to do something and I've got my fingers crossed behind my back, or I don't have the even remotest possibility of delivering, then they can point the finger and go, this rubbish promissory thing, are you going to, and we don't proceed on that basis. So we've got a paper trail, we've got all the ingredients, and so just push harder. Okay, next question, anyone?
Can you tell me any TV licenses have been have gone through?
I don't honestly know. Individual things like that, I couldn't say, but the main areas of interest that we get the most phone calls on are obviously mortgages.
Right.
And so those are that's sort of the aggro phone calls, and but just so that you know, I've had HSBC legal on, I've had Santander, I've had Lloyds, I've had Barclays legal, and yeah, they're all shouting and screaming the same thing of what we can and can't do. But ultimately they're on a loser. So TV licensing, I don't know. I'd personally just ignore it or pay it. Okay, next one. And then there's a lady right at the back there. Can you shout out your question? That's a classic, and it's something that I think maybe it could be used. So the question is really, she's negotiating with the Ombudsman, or you've sent a complaint to the Ombudsman against this rogue who sold you whatever he says. So yeah, it would be a perfect candidate for that type of thing, because the bottom line is it's the justice, it's turning the checkbook or the pen into a sword and administering that to them, because there's no compassion for them. They're just out and out thieves and liars, and they'll do to you what they did to Tom Crawford, and they'll do to Paula Campbell at Rainbow Ark Sanctuary, and it's the Agenda 21. They want you off the land, they want you out of your houses, they want you living in fear. And so yeah, just hit them and keep hitting it. I mean, the problem is you haven't really got any more instruments, you haven't got any choices. The only thing that's been delivered at the moment, I know there's the people protesting under Article 61 of Magna Carta, and there's people, there's every argument under the sun that's been used and lost. So you don't have too many arrows left in your quiver now, but these are good arrows. They don't always hit the target, but they don't break.
So, Peter, which shall I do first? That's what I'm saying. Shall I relaunch this thing? I went to court, and the judge looked about bias. He looked at the banks.
He wouldn't look at mine. Just pay it off. Send them a check.
And then open and find them again.
Well, you just go through the process, because what you've all got when you don't close these protests down, it's like in an open match of ping pong or feedback, it never closes down. Yeah, is that about it now?
Yeah, last question.
Okay.
Just explain to me again the significance of this, you referred to it as a FCUTT, this UK transaction tax, this 1% you're going to levy on seal.
Okay, very quickly. It's not a new tax, it's not a new idea. It's been branded about in the United States. It was originally put together by a guy called, I think, Alex Feigl in the 80s. And over there it was called a Robin Hood tax. Yeah? And so it's not new by any stretch of the imagination. And what it involves is moving the taxation burden from, the amazingly complex and convoluted thing it is now, even to the extent they're taxing you even for breathing with the carbon tax, to move and eradicate all that complexity and burden of tax and shift it across onto the large corporations and the stock markets and the derivatives and all the money that's going through CHAPS, BACS, SWIFT, BarX. Can you imagine the daily amount of money that's going through on mortgage payments? Mortgage payments alone in the country in a day, right?
Have you ever heard of the Cayman Islands?
Yeah.
The British Virgin Islands?
Yeah.
Yeah? Well, there you go. Answer your own question. It's not going to work, is it?
Yeah. Why isn't it?
Well, because
they'd just leave.
You said to slap a 1% tax.
Yeah.
The city of London, they'll just move.
Yeah. Well, they've nowhere to move, and if they do move, if they do move, we don't need them. It isn't an idea that we want to.
People will need the goods and services and the jobs they provide.
What, from the City of London, that we can't provide our own jobs and services? Do you know where most of the money is going at the moment? These international stock market capitalists, do you know what Amazon paid in tax last year? Do you know what Starbucks paid in tax last year? Virtually nothing. So if you're advocating to keep it as it is, then maybe you should go down to the City of London and get a job there with them boyos, where you'll feel a lot more comfortable. But for the vast majority of other people, we don't want it. And that's what's leaching the money out of the country and sending it abroad to your places like the Cayman Islands, the Bermudas, the Bahamas, the Treasure Islands around the world, the Isle of Man, if you want to go very close to home.
How are you going to stop them from doing that then?
We don't need to stop them what? Sorry, to stop them doing what?
Stop them from relocating.
We don't want to stop them relocating. That's just the opposite. We'll send them with first-class tickets to those islands. There you go. Thank you. And on that note, thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Oh, thank you.